Matt Miller, you've been chomping at the bit here. You are, as a former justice person, you are sort of, your eyes seem to bugged out. Your head's, I think, proverbially exploding here over the fact that the president announced the press conference.
Yeah, it is appalling. And the moment that happened, if DOJ was planning a press conference tomorrow, they should have canceled it. Because look at what Bill Barr has done the last few weeks. When you're handling the end of a politically sensitive investigation at the Justice Department, you want to take every step to make sure that the public has confidence that you handled that investigation fairly, in a way that was free from political pressure and in a way that you weren't putting your thumb on the side of the scale of the party you represent. And every step of the way, Bill Barr has taken the opposite action, from making his own conclusion on obstruction of justice, to refusing to answer questions about whether he's briefed the White House on the Mueller report, to this really objectionable comment about spying, to now having a press conference in the first place when he should have just let the person with the best reputation, Bob Mueller, let his words speak for himself, to then having the president announce it for him. It makes it look like he is trying to do a favor for the president, and not that he doesn't have the best interests of the Justice Department and this investigation at heart. It's extremely, extremely damaging.
Leanne, I think it's fair to say that no matter what people see tomorrow, they're going to already have, in some cases, made up their minds. I do find it fascinating that both Adam Schiff and Devin Nunes want to see the full report. And they want to see it for very different reasons. Devin Nunes doesn't trust Mueller, and Adam Schiff doesn't trust Barr.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Them and 420 members of Congress who voted to see the full Mueller report.
And pretty much everybody else. I think everybody, either you don't trust Barr here or you don't trust Mueller. That's the bottom line.
I think opinions are already baked on what they think about the president and what the president, what role was on obstruction or collusion or whatever the Mueller report's going to talk about. Those opinions are already baked as far as the public is concerned. But the public also is in agreement that they want to see the report. And as far as Democrats on the Hill are concerned, Democrats are really struggling with how to move forward with this. I mean, what comes next? What sort of response do they have once this report is released? They're going to continue to hone in on Barr, the fact that Barr is too close to the president, and the fact that he so strongly believes in this strong executive.
And Garen, Barr has enormous power here over this report. Obviously, he can redact the grand jury material. He can basically classify anything as executive privilege if he wants to. Sources and methods. There's sort of the things that you can use as your excuse to redact something very subjective.
Yeah, well, he has 4 different categories, and a lot of them are fungible. They will be color-coded, though. Very important.
Fungible, color-coded and fungible are 2 different things. For what, you know, like I don't understand.
He can say that something
is
he can say that something's executive privilege, and we won't know because we don't know what's under the, what would have been color-coded. But this all kind of brings home to me that and picking up on what Matt said, I mean, Bill Barr is sort of showing us that every day he wakes up thinking, 2 words, Jeff Sessions, right? Like, he is going to not be Jeff Sessions. He's not going to get himself in the box that Sessions found himself.
Well, he's put himself in a new box, which is not a single member of the Democratic Party trusts him right now.
True. But, the other side of that, which is potentially defensible, is that, he can't do his job if the president thinks he's not on the same team. If the president thinks that his attorney general is working against him, he actually can't be effective in his job. I mean, it goes to the question of what that job is and how pious we want to be about it. And he's clearly coming down on the side of, I ain't going to be Jeff Sessions.
Isn't this Michael Steele, like in a criminal case, the defendant comes out and announces the charges and the verdict?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like I'm just so confused here. I mean, like I have to say, it is pretty. You know how you think you just can't imagine they'd go there?
Oh, yeah.
There is not a guardrail left.
Of course not.
That they won't plow through.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's even better than the defendant coming out and announcing the verdict. It is the defense team writing an opinion, a rebuttal to a verdict they presumably haven't seen or know anything about, which I find amusing that you're going to write a rebuttal to a report that you presumably don't know.
Why should we expect anything in here? Take it at face value if Barr is either spinning the results at the beginning or being the one in redacted.
Well,
I mean, why should we trust him on that?
Well, and that's perfectly okay for Trump. He doesn't mind the fact that folks don't trust Barr on this because it's the right kind of people do and the wrong kind of people don't.
And you know what Trump would say? I didn't trust Comey.
I didn't trust Comey. Right. Exactly. So for Trump, this is a beautiful wash for him, which, again, you've covered this, and certainly the very knowledgeable and expert reporters and journalists here have covered this as well. This has been the play from the beginning to get to this moment where we're all sitting here going, oh, my God, this is either going to be the most anticlimactic thing we've ever seen or a nothing burger.
Matt Miller, I'm a big skeptic that anything we see tomorrow is going to be that much give. Maybe they will. Maybe the reason for the presser is that he is going to give more than he's comfortable, that it's going to be so damning. So the best gift he can give is to at least spin it before everybody digests it. That's just a theory.
Yeah, it's a theory, and that's not the Attorney General's job to spin things for the president. That's not what he's supposed to be doing. The question you asked a minute ago, that why would anyone have faith in Bill Barr at this point? That's the problem with his actions. I'm a Democrat. I want to have faith that the Republican Attorney General is doing the right thing. I know I'm going to disagree with the Republican Attorney General on policy, but I want to trust that the administration of justice is going to be handled in an impartial way. And every step of the way, he just keeps giving us more and more reason not to trust him. Going back to the very reason he was appointed. Your analogy about the defense, the defense getting to write the rebuttal. The defense team picked the prosecutor here. They picked a prosecutor that they know had a view of obstruction of justice that was favorable to their client. And now the defense team is announcing that the prosecutor is going to come out and announce the results of the end of the investigation. It stinks from the beginning. And there's no way that anyone that looking at this with a reasonable mind can have faith in Bill Barr. And that's a problem, because we ought to just be able to look at the facts in this report and judge the facts free from anyone's spin.
And this gets me to the sort of what the heck happens next, Leanne? Because I think politically it changes nothing.
Right.
It just hardens views.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it certainly hardens views. Look, I think it makes Barr an ineffective attorney general going forward on other issues. I just, if you don't have the confidence.
Ineffective for whom, though?
Yeah, you're right.
Ineffective.
I mean, it's ineffective. The president should be happy, but everybody else.
Yeah. Ineffective for the country, because it matters that the American people have faith that prosecutorial and investigative decisions are made without regards to politics.
Help us with history here. The Republican Congress had real problems with the last attorney general. And they held him in contempt, and they did all these things because they thought he was too cozy with this president and with the other president.
Yeah, they did. But there was never one big case where they were questioning whether Eric Holder made a decision because he was trying to do a political favor.
No, but my point is that the Republican Party thought Barack Obama and Eric Holder were somehow too close.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
Okay, this is like, beyond that.
Yeah, they seem strange compared to this.
Yes.
Right.
Well, this report's coming out when Congress isn't here. So Congress is kind of flat-footed. A lot of them are very happy to not be here, especially the Republicans. They're not going to have to answer reporters' questions about this report. But what happens next? I mean, this could inform how Democrats in the House continue to investigate the president. But as far as response from this report specifically, they don't have a path forward other than messaging at this point.
There's a couple of polls out there. They're kind of contradictory, and I don't love how one of the questions was worded. But put up these AP polls. So, should Congress continue the Trump-Russia probes? AP 53% yes, 45% no. That has a familiar number to it, 45. That feels like the Trump base hand. What is interesting here is the majority do think the president did try to obstruct Mueller here, 58%. So 58% means there are people that will support the president and believe he obstructed Mueller.
Correct. And that also follows on a number of surveys showing that people have a high level of skepticism that varies poll to poll as to whether the president was covering something up to begin with and
But the public seems to be both skeptical, they don't believe the president, and they're tired.
Yes, and tomorrow is the White House attempting to draw a line under all of that and say, and now we move on to whatever the Democrats are going to do, because that's over there and it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's, they're going to subpoena everything and it's just more crazy witch hunt. And he will be able to say, here's where the the Mueller part of my presidency ended. Here's where the witch hunt, official witch hunt, ended, and here is where the next act begins. And he's trying to start that bell.
Michael Steele, this is the poll number, though. It's Monmouth's poll, and again, you could argue that the question is not necessarily complete in how they worded it, but basically, should Congress continue to look into concerns raised by the Mueller report, 39%? Should they move on to other issues? And of course, it's, well, how do you define other issues? Is the campaign finance case another issue? Is it security or not? But my point is, that is a poll number that Mitch McConnell, every other Republican, is going to go ahead and hang their hat on. They don't like defending him, but they'll say, hey, the American public wants to move.
That's it, exactly. So this is their off-ramp,
right,
from what you were just saying about this now is over. The witch hunt is over. We can take the off-ramp, and we can now talk about health care. And we can talk about immigration.
I don't see how either of those two things help them either, right? I mean, the president's going to miss talking about Mueller.
But compared to this is...
They'll talk about judges.
Talk about judges. And we're going to appoint more of them. But yeah, I think this for a lot of the Republican members, as you pointed out, Leanna, are not here, who are happy they're not in town, and they're going to be away for a while. They don't come back for a week or more. So they're by the time they get back, this off-ramp will be so solid for them. This poll number, perfect.
Oh, you know what I mean? Congress, correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, they're going next week, too.
Yeah,
that's right.
They're gone.
By the time they come back, Matt Miller, the appetite might not be there, even though there are going to be people that are like, agita beyond agita.
It's almost like the Attorney General planned it this way. I mean,
it's so, like, if it quacks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, I mean, it's staring us in the face. What is going on, no?
That's exactly right. Look, I was one of those people that wanted to give the Bill Barr the benefit of the doubt. The way he presented himself at a confirmation hearing is someone who had done this job before. And the point he made that I thought could have been compelling, which is the president can't pressure me. I don't have to succumb to pressure from the president because I don't need this job. I'm at the end of my career. I don't need any more accolades, so I can stand up to him. And maybe that's true. Maybe he can stand up to him, and he just doesn't want to. And I think that's the worry I have here, is that to the point I made going forward, this isn't going to be the last investigation into this president. This isn't going to be the last investigation into members of his cabinet. It's not going to be the last scandal. And I don't know why anyone looking at this would have faith in him.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.